welcome to another FACEHAMMER book review show.
Fish. Hello, people.
Fish. For those that don't know, we cover everything Match Play Age of Sigmar, and this show is going to be all about the brand new IDONETH Deepkin Battletome.
We are not going to be running down through fluff or story or background or anything that isn't Match Play. So if you come for that stuff, sorry, we're going to very enthusiastically and comprehensively cover the rules in there, but not any of the background or anything like that. We are really enthusiastic about Fish, though. I think that's probably safe to say from the outset, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, we're not no path to glory here, but, you know, is this book the forgotten nightmare or the shipwreck of a book, or is it actually good?
Or is it going to be swimming around in circles like with one little thing?
Or is it going to be, or is it going to be awesome? So we'll preface this, we'll go through the rules, and we've actually played a game, which is rare, but you were in the studio today and we had a little bit of a proxy game.
Hi Russ, it's been a while.
Yeah.
Seems so weird that like I travelled back to do this remotely. I've been with you for slightly more than 24 hours, then drove home for bloody 5 hours, and now I'm speaking to you remotely from Manchester this time.
Yeah, because why record in person? It just logistically makes it harder. So I think without further ado, then let's get into it. But firstly, Games Workshop has sent us review copies, hence why we can do this on the pre-order day.
Guys, thanks.
Thank you very much. We've had plenty of time to get this ready, and we've been able to get the game in because of that. So
yeah,
that's
it makes
awesome.
A difference. It really does. And we've had time to have a late night chat with beers about what we put in lists and fiddling things around, and it's quite a good book for writing lists. Or I'd probably say that as a preface. Like the internal balance here seems really good. Overall, I'm pretty impressed with it. Seems pretty reasonable. No like standout awful things or ridiculous things. And writing lists is just like fill your boots.
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, we'll get onto the eels later, but that's another discussion.
Okay,
a little caveat that a little bit. And we also are aware that there's probably another Battletome on pre-order today to do with short, hairy, ginger, fiery dwarfs. We will be doing a show on that. But honestly, out of the two books, I'm more excited about this one. So talk about this one.
Yeah.
Doesn't mean the other one isn't good. But
two pretty sensible looking releases. I don't mean that to sound boring, but like we spoke at decent length about the Feisty one as well and read through it. And I'm pretty impressed by it, honestly.
There are no Stormcast Dragon War Scrolls in these books. Thankfully. But both the armies can have them in them if they want, so it's for your boots. So
they would be the best things in the book if you did.
Probably. Not probably. So without further ado, we'll get into the battle traits. So very similar to previously. So enclaves, pick an enclave. Just get some extra rules. We'll get to that when we get to them. Forgotten Nightmares. Friendly Deepkin units can only be picked to target a machine attack if they are the closest eligible target to the attacking model. So only shoot the closest.
Yep.
Very good for controlling.
Which means you're not weak to shooting full stop. So something that some armies really struggle with dealing with, you already dealt with just by existing, which is a good start to anything, really. Yeah,
and Tides of Death, which is the wave crashing, which is your battle round bonuses. It's pretty much the same. There is some nuance changes because the way rituals have changed, and also you can still flip the tides, which we'll talk about. And that's changed, so it's more accessible to do that. So, but that's quite good. So you've got low tide, so IDONETH units are treated as being in cover, so pretty good. Flood Tide, friendly IDONETH Deepkin can run and still shoot or charge in the same turn. High Tide, strike first. It's the one that, that's the key turn. Ebb Tide, IDONETH Deepkin can retreat and still shoot or charge. And then you repeat it back again, starting with low tide. So it comes back round. Honestly,
not cumulative, in case people are wondering. It's each of them, one of those each turn. You don't get them stacked on top of each.
No, exactly. It's not like Daughters of Cain. Get it all.
Sensible book again.
Ishran rituals. Now this has changed quite a lot. So like before there was a thing, you rolled a dice and you could do something, and you had how many characters stood in a circle and all that kind of rubbish. But they were models you didn't really take. They're expensive, not very good. Now you just get this. So as long as you've got an Ishran unit, so if you've got any character, you can do this. And it's quite useful because it's the first battle round after you've got your command points, but before the start of the first turn. So you know who's going first at this point.
Yep. And what army they got and all the rest.
And what have the, exactly. So you can go Ritual Creeping Mist. So IDONETH units that are affected by low tide cannot be picked as a target of a shooting attack unless the attacking model is within 12. So first turn, they want to alpha you with their long strikes. Nuh-uh. Ain't doing it. Not unless you translocate.
Not much in the game that's capable of getting that close to people and shooting and not being a really bad idea, right?
Mm-hmm.
Most of the stuff that's got the best shooting has it fairly ranged, fairly high powered, and they really, really don't want to be up in your grill. So if someone's going to try and do something like that, they're committing and they're risking quite a lot if they do want to get right in your face. So
it's great against KO.
Powerful.
I mean, they got to shoot the closest anyway, but like they got forced them to get really close to you. Ritual of the Surged Stream, so add 1 to run and charge rolls for IDONETH Deepkin units that are affected by Flood Tide. So +1 run and charge. It's okay.
Fast army anyway. They're a really fast army anyway. Any more is great.
This one I quite like. Ritual Deep Sight, friendly Namati units that are affected by High Tide of a ward of 5 up. So in High Tide you get 5 up ward. Now, there is a couple combos around this table, which I'll talk about as we get to it. And then you've got the Spiteful Riptide. So before an IDONETH Deepkin unit is affected by Ebb Tide retreats, roll a dice for each enemy unit within 3 and a 4+6 D3 mortal wounds. So, you know, you've got a way of, on that turn, just pulling out and doing damage, which is, sure, it's okay.
Aros has lived his life.
Always do damage on the pull out. So if you like Beast and Nurgle, then that's your that's your one. So we'll go through the command traits now. So I mean, I was just going to rock through these, and then once we get onto the discussion, that's the bit more interesting bit. But effectively, you can Kilian heroes, which is the way that the Deep can work. Is you have a Kilian, you have Ishran, and you have Eidolon. So a Kilian is like your king, like your combat guys, the guys on the sharks, the guys on the eels. Your Ishrans are like your foot characters. Your Eidolons are your big aspect to the sea, aspect to storm guys. So if you've got an Kilian hero general, so you've got Born from Agony, End of Battle Shock, roll a dice on a 6, just heal all your wounds. Random, so K, I think there's better choices.
It really screws someone over if you did it, but
it's so situational.
Yeah.
Lord of Storm and Sea, don't take battle shot tests for Deepkin within 12. And they're quite low bravery, so that's pretty good. But again, this is not one I would pick. Unstoppable Fury, well, the general's affected by High Tide. For each enemy unit within 3 of them during the combat phase, add 2 to the attacks of their melee weapons. That could be potentially great, particularly as the king, as a way to make him be affected by High Tide on the charge. So you could literally charge, pop his ability, be affected by High Tide. When you charge, make sure you're within range of a couple units, so then you're getting +2 attacks per unit. So it's
pretty doable. You get 2 or 4 out of that.
If you get 4 extra attacks with his Ren-free, damage-free weapon, you're going to be pretty happy. So
that's fine.
It's not.
Just a note with Born of Agony, it's the end of the battle shock phase, not your battle shock. So you will get a few chances of that, but I still think it's too situational.
Yeah, I mean, you've got to be hurt and not dead, right? So
yeah. So relevant, probably.
And they've only got 7 wounds.
Of the game. Yeah, so, and he might be dead.
Most stuff's going to just kill you in a 1 nowadays, or do nothing. It's that or that. It's nothing in between.
2 wounds or 20.
So Ishran, you've got Hunter of Souls. Start the combat phase. Generals with 3 of an enemy hero, enemy unit. You can roll dice on 3 plus the hero champion, or the unit champion takes D3 mortal wounds. This is a bit weird, because you could stop someone issuing commands to a unit, because if you kill the unit champion,
that's kind of it's a nice little nuance.
They can't actually issue a command ability if there's no hero within range.
Plenty of 1 or 2 wound champions out there.
But again, it's so situational, and it's on an Ishran hero. I don't think so. You have to be a general. Merciless Raider. It's your modified hit roll for an attack made by this general's 6. It automatically wounds. Yeah, we don't care about that one. And this one is probably the go-to because it gives you a lot of control in the game. So it's basically, this is how you flip the tides. So the good thing about this is you decide before priority, but after setup, and you can basically say you're going to reverse the tide. So it starts at the back, and you'll get high tide in the second battle round.
Yeah,
which against aggressive combat armies is really good.
Oh, it's invaluable.
And against shooting armies, you don't flip the tide, so it depends what you're playing against.
We tested this one.
We did. I think that's one of the go-tos. You got the Eidolon ones. So you've got Ancient Pride. If the modified hit roll for an attack made by a melee weapon is a 1 or a 2, it fails. Attack sequence ends. So no hitting on 2s.
Yeah, not bad.
It's okay.
Yeah.
Aspect of the Storm. At the end of the charge phase, it's general to carry out a monster's rampage, even though it's not a monster. Good, it's okay. Aspect of the Sea. If you successfully cast a spell not combined with a modified roll of 7 or more, it could attempt to cast 1 extra spell.
That sounds great. If this one's so you could get 2 extras from that if you've got 2 casts.
Yeah, or 3 or 4. Doesn't say the extra cast can't benefit from the same rule.
Yeah, so you could combat that with having an extra spell, and then you can have 3 attempts at getting something on a 7-up and casting a billion spells, in theory.
Yeah, because you could cast Shield, Bolt, his 2 War Scroll ones, and the 2 you know from the lore, so you could have 6 spells if you just kept rolling 7 or more. And if you've got Arcane, because it doesn't say, it does say unmodified, so it's unmodified, but you get a reroll.
Yeah,
so it's
really, really helpful.
You could fish for 7s, pardon the pun, but you could. I think the Aspect of the Sea is very strong.
The tasty boy. He's good for his points too.
Yeah, we've got some artifacts. They've got these are some of the ones that featured before. They've been slightly changed. Cloud of Midnight is gone, which is a shame because that was really good. Disharmony Stones. It's too many words. Pick 2 heroes within 12. Your opponent picks one. It's like either they take a wound on a 3-up, or they take D3 on a 5-up, or each takes D3, and then on a 4-up you take D3. It's like they choose. It's like it's whatever. It's never good. Don't bother. These are Kilian only, so these are your combat guys again. Hateful Frenzy. Once per battle, start your hero phase. Drink the potion. Add 1 to hit. Add 1 to wound. Add 1 to the attacks. Add 1 to run. Add 1 to charge. However, at the start of the next hero phase, they take D3 mortal wounds, and they cannot pile in. So they go battle brutastic, and then they have a bit of a, ooh, I'm a bit tired.
It's a good. I mean, that's a lot of buffs for that turn, though, isn't it?
Yeah, and to be honest, like
your hero phase, notably, so it has to be your.
Yeah, but what's quite good about this is if she'll go and they're going next, you charge something, you kill it, their hero phase, you take the damage. You could then technically heal the damage with heroic action.
Yeah.
And then you're not going to be piling anyway because there's no enemy there. And if they charge you, they're going to be within half an inch. You get to fight anyway, so it's not too bad. The negative seems worse than it actually is.
Does it say that it stops?
If you do to the end of that turn, yeah.
Okay, got you. Cool. So like, ooh.
Whatever. And then you've got the armor of this sci-fi. The modified hit roll for attack target bears a 6. All the effects that would be triggered by the roll are ignored. Very situational.
Yeah. Plenty of people just got.
If you knew what you were playing and there was a really good ability on the 6, it'd be really good. But you're never taking that in a balance list. Some Ishran ones. So we've got the Dritch Leech. Subtract 1 from casting, unbinding, and dispelling if enemy was within 18. That's actually really good.
That's great. That's my first ones that I saw that I thought was like, I know what it's like playing against a Dardig, and it's really really easy to underestimate how much of an effect that has, especially unbinding. You're not only benefiting when they're trying to get stuff off, benefiting when you're trying to get stuff off, which is almost as good as having +1 to cast.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah. It's Rune of the Surging Gloomtide. Once per battle end of your first movement phase, summon a Gloomtide Shipwreck. One Gloomtide Shipwreck wholly within 12 of the bearer, more than 3 from all models, objectives, and terrain, endless spells, and invocations added to your army.
We'll touch on these later, but they're different.
There's definitely some tactics around that. Particularly if you've got the choice to go first, you could get into a very good position. They're also garrisonable, so and they give you a ward so on your units if they're within 6, wholly within. So you could almost set up a defensive position further forward.
Like probably like Marshall planned out.
I quite like it. I think it's actually, if you're playing a game plan, especially if you're using a lot of the Marty or Reavers, I think it's actually quite strong.
Yeah.
Then you've got Brain Barnacles, which is a bit of an unusual one, but start of your hero phase, pick an enemy hero within 12, roll 2d6. If the roll in inches is equal to or greater than the distance between them, subtract 1 from hit and win rolls for them for the rest of the battle. So you can set a trap with this. If you set up your hero quite close to the front line of something they're going to charge, and then you just go Spider-Man and chuck your like sieges in the face and make them rubbish for the game. Requires a lot of setup.
If you toe-to-toe with something, your odds are pretty good.
But to be honest, if you're within like 3 or 4 inches, well, probably like say it's like 4 or 5 inches, you're quite likely to do it. And that's a massive debuff if you hit something like a Gargant or Archeon or Nagash or any like Maw-Crusher or Kragnos. That's a big deal.
It really is.
And I know it's a bit random, but your opponent would be very worried about that if you explain exactly how that works just before they decide what they charge. So you're
also super quick. So if you want to stab something and then leg it away, or you have something that can flee and charge or whatever, why not?
Yeah. Yeah, so it's okay. Eidolon ones. So you got the Bioshock shell. So once the battle start the combat phase, you can use it. Pick an enemy hero within 9. It's visible. Roll 3d6. The roll is greater than their bravery. They strike last.
This is better than it looks.
It's very. I think it's very good because you're basically allowing all those things. Like what we found out, didn't we? Like anything like a Maw-Crusher goes and wants to just wipe out a unit, suddenly takes 6-7 wounds. It's a big deal.
Horrible. Yeah, it's massive. Really, really good. And I mean, the odds like 10.5 to average on 3d6.
Yeah.
Like, so on average, you almost beat every bravery available in the game with it.
Yep. And good deterrent. You got the Whirl Shell. Wow. Whip. Cool whip. Is that you say?
Cool.
Wow shell. Once per battle start of the combat phase, unleash the power of the shell. If you do until the end of that phase, if the unmodified hit roll for an attack made by melee weapon targets that bears a 1 or 2, it fails. So it's the same as the trait, but it's once per battle.
Yeah.
So it's okay. I think if you're running
just
like
kind of push
double
people's CP usage in a different direction with this, though, don't you? They don't have the option. Generally, things can hit on 3s. They just decide to not spend and hit on 2s.
Yeah.
Like, so it's a bit of an awkward one, isn't it? I've still not settled my thoughts on this.
Yeah, but I think sometimes like you just don't want them having the option, you know. So, yeah, it's like it sounds good, but who knows? Then you've got the Kraken Tooth. Once per battle in the shooting phase, pick an enemy unit within 12. Then basically roll a dice, look at the result. So 1, you take D3. 2 to 5, they take D3. On a 6, pick a model from the target unit. If it's got less than 10 wounds, it's dead. If the model has a wound characteristic of 10 or more, it takes 2d6 mortals.
Not a bad option. Obviously, that's 1 in 6 is pretty scary.
It's in your shooting phase, so you can move pick a target, so you're not worried about, getting. It's not like at the start of the hero phase or some random stuff like that. It's like, you know, once about in your shooting phase, so you can move and do it. So it's pretty good.
Yeah, it's nice when it doesn't say hero phase. With this stuff like this, I'm always looking out for it to not say that.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Then we got mount traits. These are something that was introduced in Broken Realms, so they're in the actual army book now. So one deep mare, which is the seahorse, and one leviathan can have the following mount traits. So you've got the swift-finned impaler. So if the roll for his horn is a 6, you take d6 more instead of d3, because they've got like an impaly horn. Savage ferocity, add 1 to the attacks of its fangs, talons, and tails. And my favorite, void shield darkness, subtract 1 from hit rolls for attacks made by enemy units that are within 3 of the unit.
Not against this unit.
No, just if you're within 3, you're -1.
Curse book. So unsurprising, you must think that's
it's the best one. Yeah,
it is by a long way.
Leviathan, I'm not sure now. I think they're all very good. So you've got Ancient. If the rend characteristic is -1, change it to rend of nothing.
Solid, really. That's a lot of stuff in the game that's rend 1.
And then you've got subtract 1 from wound rolls for attacks made by many weapons that have a damage characteristic of 1.
Also fine.
And then reverberating carapace, so increase the range of the void drum to 15.
This looks like the least exciting, but is it actually the best?
I think it probably is the best one.
Yeah.
Because the other two are really situational. Like, it might do a little bit of mitigation, but probably not enough to be significant.
Allowing yourself to be that bit, those 3 inches further towards another objective, or further over the table, or less restricted, is pretty good.
There are a lot of... the good thing about the rend one is it's not melee.
Yeah, period.
So
a lot of shooting doesn't go beyond rend 1. It's very common to get.
If you know that a unit is rend 1, you could be pretty cavalier throwing your turtle into it.
Oh, completely. So it has 2 up save until it's taken like 9 wounds or something.
So they're pretty resilient.
You're on a 2 up.
Yeah. So it's don't roll once and you're fine. Then you've got the Law of the Deeps.
This is a great spell lore. This is ridiculously good spell lore.
Yeah, it's techie.
All 4 of these are just... But yeah, there's no crap here.
So you've got Steed of Tides on a 5, range of 6. Pick a hero that's not a monster. Eidolons are not monsters, so it's all your heroes. It does say friendly heroes, so if you had an ally, you could use it on. Remove the hero from the battlefield, set it up again on the battlefield more than 9 away from all enemy units. A unit set up with this ability cannot move in the following movement phase. It's a teleport.
Yep.
And you've got Counter Current on 18 range. Pick an enemy unit. Until your next hero phase, half run and charge rolls for that unit.
Yeah.
Which doesn't sound good, but then when you think, oh, we're 3 inches away, suddenly you need a 6, not a 3, that's a massive difference on the 2d6 roll.
Yeah, it's a really big deal. And redeploy exists, so you can push that for people. It's a good option.
I really like Counter Current. I think it's a very underutilized spell. Pressure of the Deep is also very good. Cast on a 7, range 12, pick an enemy model, roll a dice. If it's greater than their wounds, it's dead. Clean. So I'll just snipe that guy out, break your coherency, take your champion out, take your command model out. Really good.
It's a way to kill half a unit without having to touch it. I did a spell. I'll go over there now. Half you's dead. Take a battle shot. Brilliant.
Yeah. And then you've got Arcane Corrosion. Corrosion. Apparently it's a real word. It's erosion by either wind or sea. So there you go. Is on a 6, range 12. Pick an enemy unit within range. Worsen the rend of their melee weapons by 1.
Solid.
Great.
Great. Yeah. What a good spell lore. It makes me feel slightly upset about most other spell lores in the game. Really good.
I like the fact it's only 4 spells, but they're all good. And you're like, You know,
None
there's
are on a 9 even or anything. I think the highest is
no.
7, isn't it? Is it 5, 6, 6, 7?
Yeah.
5, 6, 7, 6. Yeah.
And that arcane Christian would be quite good with the ancient, because if they had Ren 2, drops them to Ren 1, suddenly the ancient chicks in and it goes down to 0.
Yeah, and then something that should be an elite unit is just feeling like absolute crap against your indestructible killer turtle.
While you're just snappy and flappy shell time.
Yeah.
That's it. Squirrel. So that's all the mount traits, artifacts, spells. So we got the enclaves. So these have gone under obviously quite a big change, because before it tied you into artifacts and you got command abilities and all that kind of jazz. So this does affect battle line as well. So you've got Iron Rack, which they've got Legacy of Glory. You could take out a heroic action with an Iron Rack, a Kilian hero. Voltonus is Iron Rack. So instead of any of heroic action, pick one Iron Rack, a Kilian unit, hold within 12 of that hero. Until the end of the turn, you can choose that unit to be affected by either Flood or Ebb Tide, in addition to any other. So that's the retreat and charge or the run and charge, I think. So it's okay, but I'm not really that. They're so fast anyway. I don't think it's that good. It's cost you heroic action as well. So
yeah, are you going to see units that much as well?
And they're a Kilian, and you're like, although you might see sharks and turtles, they're a Kilian. So they running and charging or retreat and charging could be big.
Yeah, unit of sharks is the only thing that really makes that seem tempting to me.
Mm-hmm. If you run, I mean, eels aren't that bad. Like,
no, I like the defensive ones.
They're just not the only scroll in the book anymore, which is nice.
Wonderful.
Then you got Nautilar. So Crushing Assault. Carry out a monstrous rampage of a friendly Nautilar Leviathan. Change the rend of its massive side fins and jaws to -3. So Nautilar also make Leviathan's battle line. So you can have 3 Leviathans as your 3 battle line units.
A hero, and then you're pretty much done.
Yeah, and then you take an aspect to the sea or whatever, then an Ishran hero on foot to give you the tide flip, and then you're away. Yeah, I mean, pretty cool. I mean, it's a good rampage.
Battle line, basically, aren't you?
Yeah, I mean, you might even run a mixed list, because if you're running a turtle anyway, making it battle line unlocks some of the formations like 1-drop. It doesn't suddenly, you know.
You also go like turtle, 20 blob of archers, bit of other stuff, and then, you know, maybe that makes it fine.
They are 500 points, so it's hefty. More fun, which is essentially the same. So if the Lawlight ability from a Soul Render does an Amati unit, add 3 to the number that are returned, which actually is pretty good.
It is. It's a different type of list. I think it's going to... People won't have expected this from Deepkin ever in the past, really.
They're like they've always been my favorite in terms of aesthetic and background, because they're based in Shaiish and they're all a bit wibbly. So I've always wanted this to work. And I think they're not impactful enough now to worry about, oh, I picked this niche one because it doesn't cost you anything. Whereas before you were like, oh, I really had to pick these. I think it was Dom Hain or Futan, otherwise you didn't bother, basically. Speaking of which, Futan, the Bloodthirsty Shiver. So you can include Bloodthirsty Shivers. They're basically 3 individual sharks. And it makes...
Is it 3 or is it up to... Is it like 2 or 3?
No, it's 3 individual.
3.
So you can't have units of 2 in that Shiver. They're just 3 individual. It's a special entry in the chart. Their battle line. And basically, at the start of the combat phase, you can pick 1 unit from a Shiver. To the end of the phase, if the unmodified hit roll for an attack made by its bites is a 6, it does 2 hits instead of 1. But if the attacking unit is within 3 of 1 or more other units from the same Shiver, it does 3 hits on a modified roll of a 6 instead. And the bites and the attacks on the sharks is no joke.
Yeah, they're pretty good.
Particularly if you're going next against something you've shot or you've wounded, because they get extra attack on the bites as well. So, you know, pop a couple 6s and suddenly you're doing like 10 hits with your bite from your 4
Your damage
attacks.
can almost double really quite easily.
Yeah.
If you spike a little bit.
Plus it unlocks sharks as battle line, and sharks are probably, so I should use the right word, the Alapex is probably the one of the best units, I would say.
Yeah, they're really good. They're very well.
As an all-rounder.
Yeah, completely.
Good in combat, good at shooting, fast, counters 2, decent save. They're pretty good. I mean, they're 165 points. The Shiver is 495, so there's no discount. You just pay for all 3 of them, but it can be battle lines. So if you were like, I really don't want any thralls, you could run 2 of those Leviathan and your Eidolon, etc. And then basically, if you wanted to run in, you were like, well, that's my army. Or you could actually go, actually, I fancy doing Nautilar, so I'll just take 2 Leviathans and 3 sharks, you know, and a battle line unit of something, and then whatever, then you could do that too. So you can, like, you've almost got these 500-point blocks that could either be 3 sharks or a turtle, and you could flip which your battle line. So you could do quite a bit of jiggery pokery with the army. But anyway, that's a few ton. Domhain is quite techy. So you've got Namati Savages. So if you take the first turn in the battle round, in your combat phase after a friendly Namati unit is fought, and there are no enemies within 3 inches of that Namati unit, you can charge with that unit if it's within 12 of an enemy unit. And then if it finishes that charge, you can then attack again.
Pretty cool.
It is only Namati. So if you're doing that in High Tide, that's particularly good because you would get to strike before them. Whereas otherwise they would choose and could hit them back before they struck, but it could force your opponent into a problem where they got to fight somewhere they didn't want to.
Really efficient for CP usage.
Could also nab an objective if you get cheeky with that.
Yeah. Well, it's more move, more damage. If you buff them once, you actually buff them twice. And that could be before anyone else has fought, so pretty solid. Because
you could, like, literally charge something small, screeny, kill it, then immediately charge what you wanted to charge, and then go at that.
Your that attack isn't a waste on the first one because it's still there for the second.
It's still there, yeah. So, yeah.
Finding ways to buff your guys' AoE as well.
There is, yeah.
The other Eidolon gives you +1 to wound, doesn't it?
Yeah, and the turtle gives you +1 to hit, and there's other things you can do. So,
is doable.
Then, 2s and 2s. Then if you take the second battle round, then Domhain here is used the redeploy to a Namati unit. You can pick up to 3 units of Namati to receive the command instead of 1. So this looks like it would trigger, and unlike the Iron Jaws where you just have a token that you tick down, they would immediately do it.
Yeah.
So
it's a lot of movement though.
It is. So you could almost have your battle line of like ebbing and flowing. You could also do it if you wanted to reposition your archers to be in a position to. Oh, they wouldn't be able to unleash hell, would you, if you've redeployed? So
no, but you could get towards an objective or just be safer. You know, there's a lot of it's a game of movement, and you're an army that wants to be fighting on its own terms. So both of those are great options.
It's one of those
your fragile units as well. They're the ones that can need protecting.
Yeah, and like if you run up and you go and roll for turn, if I get the turn, I can be aggressive. They get the turn. I've got this counter deploy thing that I can use. So if you run a couple of units of Namati Thralls, even if they're just 10s, that's enough to be problematic.
Not crap anymore.
It's an interest. It's really interesting, that one. I don't know if it'll see much play, but
I think it's a bit like Iron Suns. Like you're just going to force your opponent to behave differently, right? Like you remind them that this exists, and if they forget it, they'll get caught out by it. And if they remember it's there, they just can't behave quite normally. They will get caught out by the damage that these units can do as well. Like they look like glass cannons and they hit like glass cannons, but when your glass cannons go first and there are 2s and 2s, and then fight something else, it's probably going to feel a bit bad.
Sorry.
Hey, you didn't go twice.
No, didn't need to. And then you've got the Brymdar. So during deployment, you set up a friendly Soul Squire using the Finder of Ways. Up to 3 IDONETH Deepkin units can join it instead of 2. In addition, when you set up any units that join it, you can set them at wholly within 12 and more than 9. So it gives you a bigger radius, so you get more units off the table with your Soul Scryer.
I think 2's enough, though, isn't it? Like, is that
He
really
only gets 1. So instead of up to 2. Oh no, yeah. So you get 3 instead of 2. Yeah,
I like 2 and a dude is fine.
Mm-hmm.
Unless you want your entire army, which I guess there's. It's kind of cool, actually. You could arrive with a proper damage blob out of that, shooting-wise, especially.
Yeah, and I think the days of like the all eels off the table with Soul Scryers, pop on the edge, charge, unleash your bolts, delete is kind of gone. I think it's been gone for a while.
We've got plenty to unleash, though.
You can still do it with a unit if you wanted to shock something, and it's still okay. I don't think it's awful. But
I think the heroes is quite once you look how exciting the units are in this book and how many heroes you end up wanting, I think the heroes lots are pretty hotly contested. A lot of lists, if you've not gone balls deep on like turtle power or shark power or whatever, you're gonna end up pushing towards 4 heroes, but it's pretty difficult to pick which they're gonna be.
Yeah.
And you get to a point where you're gonna have to decide whether you want to have a not low amount of units or drop a hero.
Yeah.
And I think it's hotly contested.
So we got some match play strategies because they always go in. A Kilian Pursuit, the Creeping Groom. So the battle ends. You complete this. There are 3 or more Kilian units wholly within enemy territory.
Meh.
Yeah. The Creeping Gloometide,
and that's lots of units.
When the battle ends, you complete this grand strategy that any Gloomtide shipwrecks in your army on the battlefield, and all of them are more than 3 from all enemy units. It's not a bad one.
No, but I think you're going to tend to put them up defensively as walls where battles will be fought. So the chances are that there's still some people around them. Is
maybe. I think it's what it is. If you're winning the game, they're not going to be even 3 of you.
Yeah.
So I think it's also like backwards. It's also like if you wanted them to not be in range of objectives, then they want to be within range of that and not there. Then you could do it. I mean, because it says
all of them.
Yeah.
You could dummy. You could have one and just put it in a really crap place.
Yeah.
And go after it, and then your fast guys can go and clear it if you need.
Yeah.
It's kind of tacky, isn't it? Actually.
So it's okay. I mean, it's not awful.
It's fun.
And then you got Dominion of the Deep Winds. When the battle ends, you complete this grand strategy of the only monsters on the battlefield are Leviathans.
Yeah, cool.
You just take Beastmaster, wouldn't you, if you've got Leviathans? So
it's
like one without the other. So
strictly worth.
Namarti Assault. When the battle ends, you complete this grand strategy. 2 or more Namarti units are within 3 of enemy units, or the only battle line units on the battlefield are Namarti units. Again, just to hold the line. So,
obviously they're ones that are in the current GHB, aren't they? So I guess maybe these would look better if things change. But currently,
yeah, I mean at the moment,
yeah.
You got some battle tactics. Assassins of the High Tides. Complete this battle tactic with 2 or more enemy units destroyed during this turn by attacks made by IDONETH Deepkin units that are affected by the High Tide ability. That's a fairly easy one.
Yeah, absolutely doable.
Predators of the Deep. Pick one unit in your opponent's starting army that's on the battlefield as a wounds captured 8 or more and has 0 wounds allocated to it. You complete this tactic if that unit is destroyed by a friendly Kilian Alapex unit.
Super doable.
Doable as well.
Especially given that they got a ridiculous range and then they're all right in combat. You can double down on that.
Yeah. Revenge of the Namarti. You complete this battle tactic with any hero or monster is destroyed this turn by an attack made by a friendly Namarti unit.
Just have the option.
Yeah, it's quite good because this is attack, so you could shoot them. So
shooting isn't bad.
The shoot's good. Deny trespassers. Pick a Gloomtide shipwreck in your army that is within 12 of any enemy units. You complete this battle tactic with the Gloomtide shipwreck is more than 12 from all enemy units at the end of the turn. Again, it's basically kill something if it's within 12, which is again quite doable depending on what the unit is.
Again. Yeah.
Trapped in the Undercurrents. If you complete this battle tactic, if 3 or more friendly IDONETH Deepkin units retreated and made a charge during the same turn.
More difficult.
Could be doable if you're playing in the. If you start the turn, you look and you've got units locked in combat and you're in the tide which would retreat and charge. It's probably quite easy to do that one. particularly if you've got the ritual, it gives you +1 because you can't fail. You just move outside, free away. Okay, they've all passed. That's my battle tactic.
Yeah.
And there's no risk then, so it's not too bad. Ishran defense. When you reveal this battle tactic, pick an objective wholly within enemy territory. At the end of this turn, you complete this if you have control of that objective and there are a friendly Ishran unit within 6 of that objective. Could be quite doable, especially if you teleport. You could teleport a wizard over there. You know, okay, you got to get a spell off, but
you got to go cast it.
Sometimes you're in the game and you're like, haven't really got a lot to do here. I don't think I can do many of these, and then like one of these might be the one that pulls you out.
Yeah, or these let you do the others until later or whatever. That's a pretty good selection of battle tactics, I would say.
I looked at those and I never thought, oh, any of these are a bit meh. Like in the Nurgle one, you look, I'll summon a great and clean one within 3 of an objective. You're like, yeah, whatever.
Whereas like, there's no enemy battle line alive and yours are alive or something like that. And Iron Jaws, I think there is. Yeah, and they're good.
Yeah, like
all right,
doable.
Sure.
Quite useful.
Quite a lot in those 8 pages or whatever it is, isn't there? That's
a lot of rules.
Yes, it has heavy amounts to digest. The scrolls are pretty straightforward, but the depth, I think, comes from how your bubbles of AoEs and effects and stuff like that is going to end up totting up in the context of whatever.
Yeah, I mean, it's literally like, how do you combo all this stuff together? So
and then drop for 400 points from your 2,400 point list.
Yeah, and then once you've written, go on, I want this, realize you're 400 points over and try and make some concessions. So
you've got to pick a route and go with it, or decide like, I'm going Noah's Ark. There's no 2 ways to do this army.
Yeah, but I like the fact that there isn't an obvious answer. So
not at all.
It's a bit like the Nurgle book. You could play Droning Guard, you could play Drowned Men, you could play Befouling, and they're all good. And just like,
and then when you bought all your beasts, you get to try out another unit, and you've got them as blocks or individuals or whatever, change on your battle line. It's almost one for starting and then being like 400 points different. 400 points different.
It encourages you almost to do it in the traditional way of buy one of everything and then start buying extras of the things you like, and you could probably write lists which work. So, Eidolon of Mathlan, the Aspect of the Storm. So, both Eidolons have got a 5-up ward save.
Yep, both of them aren't monsters.
No. They've obviously got their totems, so they've got an 18-inch command ability issue. 12 wounds, 3-up save, movement 12, bravery 10. That's the same on both. Combat profile, obviously the Storm is the fighty one, so he's got 2-inch reach, 4 attacks, freeze, 2s, rend 2, damage 2. He gets +1 attack and +1 damage on the charge, so that's quite a pokey attack. 4 attacks from his Cull Hook, or Kroll Hook, I should say. Freeze 2s, rend 1, damage 2. And then you've got the bitey fishies, which, yeah, whatever.
He can retreat in charge as well, just an important note, so you know.
And he heals when he does it.
He does.
And then he's got Drench with Hate, which is add 1 to wound rolls by melee weapons by IDONETH Deepkin units, excluding mounts, wholly within 12 of any friendly units with this ability.
Pretty good.
It is decent. Obviously, affects himself, so he's wounded on 2s anyway, but if you've got a negative to wound, he's still going to be wounded on 2s. It's pretty good. Yeah, I mean, +1 to wound bubble, decent. He's also got a pulled into the depths. At the start of the combat phase, pick an enemy hero with a wounds catches of 8 or less. Add 1 to hit and win rolls for attacks made by this unit to target that hero. So again, if you want to really hit them more on 2s and -1 or whatever it is, then yeah, whatever overkill you want.
His sharp flank, his fish aren't a mount, are they? So
no,
you're making sure his fish getting in there.
Yeah, there'd be 2s and 2s. They'd be like, so yeah, he's cool. I mean, he's 350 points. 355. Yeah. So he's expensive. That wound bubble is really good, but it doesn't affect like the shark bites.
Yeah.
So all the eel attacks or the Leviathan attacks. So it's
these guys as basically being 16 wounds because of their ward. I think he's the one people would look at and be like, oh, a wound bubble and he hits hard. And maybe he's the immediately obvious choice, but my favorite is coming up.
Aspect of the Sea.
Yeah.
Big city hat.
Yeah, 325 points.
But has has a ranged attack, which is immediately good.
Yeah.
Not as good in
teleport
combat.
yourself within 9 or so.
Yeah.
Teleport yourself and have a chance at doing your ranged attack.
Yep. Obviously not quite as good in combat. 3 attacks, freeze, rend 2, damage 2, and 2 attacks, freeze 4s, rend 1, damage 1, 2d6 fishies. Now he can re-roll cast, dispel, and unbind, which is ace.
Maximum, yes.
It's like Master of Magic times 3 or times 2.
Remember how the game is at the moment as well.
Yeah.
Not many Nagashes about.
And if he casts any spells, you can heal D3 wounds allocated to him. So pretty easy when you got 2 casts with a reroll, you're probably going to get a spell off, right?
Worth noting for both of these guys, they look like they should be or could be unique. They're not. So you can pop stuff on these guys, including get your spells off on a 7.
And you can have more than one. You could run double.
Yeah, you could have one of each, or you could have double
C.
Yeah, and all the spells.
Or triple storm.
That'd be oppressive.
Yeah. Because it's good. And then friendly IDONETH Deepkin units holding within 18 are bravery 10, which is ace because they're bravery 6 or 7. So don't really want to be running away. You tend to run small units anyway, but it really helps with your thralls.
Oh, it does. You only need to take 5 wounds and then roll a 6, and you'll feel pretty bad.
Yeah, I mean you'd feel pretty bad anyway if you so you've got the cloying 2 spells, cloying sea mists. So on a 6, range of 12, pick an IDONETH Deepkin unit, or pick an enemy unit. If you do IDONETH unit, you heal D3. If you pick an enemy unit, they take D3.
Could be himself.
Or you can heal your turtle with it, or a shark, or so there's plenty. It's really, just a heal. Really, it's really strong.
The fact you don't have to select a heal spell as well, and you just come with it is wonderful, because often it feels a bit bad to select it.
Yeah.
But having one always there is just brilliant.
If you wanted to be really sketchy with this, you could have a Leviathan as the closest thing. They have to, or defensive heal unit, they have to shoot it. And then you've got Life Swarm, and you're just there going, I'll heal you, Life Swarm twice. You'll go, I'll unbind my own Life Swarm next turn, I'll cast it again, or whatever. It's like, you can... A Life Swarm following it around would be really quite oppressive, to be honest. You've got Tsunami of Terror. It's a spell that has a casting of 7, which is quite high, a range of 12. Pick D3 enemy units, subtract 1 from their save rolls into an exterior phase.
It used to be subtract 1 from their hit rolls, maybe with a larger range. Can't quite remember exactly, but that is an incredible spell. That is just such a good spell. Obviously, the range is short. If it was longer, it would be absolutely bent and shouldn't be in the game.
But you can easily go Steed of Tides, Teleport, Tsunami of Terror.
And you could have gained yourself an extra spell if you got Steed of Tides off.
Well, you would have.
Spell on a 7 up.
Because you've done it on a 7. So then you get another spell. And then you could go, take D3 Moors, or... Yeah. And then suddenly you're like, then you could shoot them, and then you could go for a charge.
I think this guy's he's a proper just utility beast, isn't he? There's a lot of options here. And he's just about survivable enough that you don't have to worry about him like you would about something else. 3 up, 5 up, 12 wounds is just...
He reminds me a bit of Arcan.
Yeah.
Like that, a really good utility piece, but good in combat, but not great, but then not easy to kill. So it's like he's almost like an Arcan light.
But with the rerolls is such a big deal.
The rerolls makes a huge difference.
They've taken that from things in the game. Hey, I haven't bitched about Slanesh yet. So, but the contorted.
You get to reroll cast.
Epitome. It had reroll cast and unbind, and it was taken from it, presumably because it was thought to be too good. It is really good. Like, it's insanely good. I couldn't write a list without this guy in it. For his points at 325, absolute steal, considering what he does to the army.
Mm-hmm. I think he's ace. Like, my army, I ran him. I think he's brilliant.
That's why you wouldn't.
There's so many like techie options with it, even if you wanted to do that Crush of the Deep thing and all that. I mean, there is an argument when you take an enhancement just to have extra spells because the spells are that good.
Yeah.
It reminds me very much of like the Law of the Necromancer, Death Mage's Law. From,
yeah.
Like very techy, lots of very good spells. You want all
Great
of them.
debuff. Yeah. He's when we were doing, I know it's really weird to compare it to when we were doing Conjurus, and we were like, my god, his spell is so good, and he's like, obviously his points aren't nearly as good as this guy feels. The fact you've got a spell deck like that and 2 spells that are just brilliant. Yeah, I can't get over the idea of him being in every single army. 1+, I would say, in my opinion.
Then we've got Voltonus and the Kilian King. So essentially, Voltonus is like a beefier version. The command ability has gone for the extra. I used to give you extra attacks, and you could do it multiple times, and all that kind of stuff. But it's like, well, I think you have to be in high tide, then you could get extra attacks per command point and all that kind of jazz. So obviously that's gone anyway because you can't stack them and whatever. But anyway, 8 wounds, 3 up save. It's got a good combat profile. It's got 4 attacks, freeze, red, 2 damage free, and then you've obviously got the same profile. I think he might have a slightly better mount. I think it's exactly the same actually. Yeah, it's exactly the same.
Yeah.
He's got the King's Shield, so if he's affected by a spell or an end of spell on a 3+, you can ignore it. That's actually really good because I played against Lynch Archeon with my Nurgle, and that double 5-up bounce spell was just a pain in the ass. There's a lot of armies that want to use a spell. That's a 3-up ignore is amazing. You get to add 1 to hit rolls made by melee weapons by Kilian units, excluding mounts, wholly within 12. The Kilian King does that, but it's only 9, so it's the same. You've got the Horn. I know I do. So after it makes a charge,
guy. This guy's not getting a look in comparison.
Pick an enemy unit within 1 on a 2+, take D3 mores. So they both got that. Obviously, the mount trait, you can make that D6 mores. He's the Supreme Lord of the Tide. So once per battle, the start of the combat phase, pick 3 different IDONETH units that are affected by high tide. Add 1 to the attacks. So the other king has once battle start of the charge phase, you can pick D3 different friendly IDONETH units wholly within 12 of a friendly unit with this ability. That unit you picked are affected by the high tide from the Tides of Death table. So it is at the end of your charge phase, but if you've charged in and you've got both Voltonus and the Kilian King in an EO list, you go, right, I'm going to have +1 attack from Voltonus, even if it's not high tide, and I'm going to pop the Kilian King's ability to make it high tide, so they basically get the +1 attack, and they go first.
Yep.
So
also, it's just attacks characteristic melee weapons by the unit. It's not excluding mounts, which is written in a lot of other places in this book.
Yeah. So
the mounts do benefit.
If you're running an eel strike force, then these 2 in combination are actually really good.
That's a horrible shock and awe term, isn't it?
You've also, I mean, Voltonus is an iron rack, but it doesn't really matter because you don't really you don't benefit from the things, but a lot of it doesn't really affect units. It only affects units like Battle Line If and a few fringe cases, so it doesn't really matter. What I would say is they are quite pricey. So I think the Kilian King is 250, and Voltonus is maybe
90 for Voltonus and 250. Yeah.
So that's a lot of points for those 2.
Yeah, it's the right type of army. They're going to feel more solid, but they don't cast a spell. You're giving up quite a lot of points that could be other things for them. So you've got to be getting your value out of them.
Well, I do think they're fast. They've got a good armor save. They hit hard. Their ability is really strong. It doesn't cost a command point. It just does it.
8 wounds, 3 up. No ward.
No
wards. They're ignoring spells, but it 8 wounds with a 3 up for that points is already pushing it. You've got to make sure that he gets his value in your list, otherwise he'll feel a bit bad about it.
You can give them a ward if you set them up with Holy Within 6 of a Gloomtide, I think. It might not be able to actually if they got a mount. I'll have to check that. Then you've got your Ishrans. So you've got your Ishran Tidecaster. So actually, one of the key things they've changed here, she's now got a 4-up armor save. She's a wizard. You also has a 5-up ward.
The ward is people who do not have a mount.
Yeah, so. I thought it would be, yeah. So she's got the Master of the Ether Sea. So if any units with this ability are part of your army, you can pick 2 different Ishran rituals to influence the Ether Sea during the battle instead of 1. So you get double ritual. Again, if she dies, it doesn't matter. You've still got it on. The Riptide spell, 7 on 18. Pick an enemy unit within range. They take D3 mortal wounds and subtract 1 from hit rolls. Okay. So great spell. She's 150 points. Gives you a second ritual. She's got a 5-up ward. She's a wizard. Pretty good. I really like her. Bad. But I do find her being squeezed out of my army list.
She will be. I think she's one of the, especially at that points value, it's pretty close to a shark or other stuff that feels quite significant in the list.
Mm-hmm. Then we've got Lotan. So he's actually good now, which, he was so bad that no one ever saw him. Yeah. So he's got his quill, so he can poke you with a quill, because, why not?
That's what I expect.
But he basically you get add 1 to wound rolls for attacks made by melee weapons by friendly IDONETH Deepkin units wholly within 12 of this unit. So that's not excluding mounts. It's just +1 to wound bubble. Yeah. So pretty good. If you didn't want to take the aspect of the sea, actually the storm, sorry, for his drenched in hate.
And if you're playing conservatively, or he can keep up, which he might struggle given that he's a 6 and a lot of your stuff is 14.
But you could also, if you were playing Brumdar, Eo Assault, he could be one of the guys you bring on 9 away from the enemy, but you're only within 12.
That's a good point.
So he's not
a little bomb, isn't it?
And I know he's got the Iron Rack keyword, but you can still put him off. So because I think the ability affects the Scryer, not him. So it doesn't say it has to be that Brumdar units. It just says that a Brumdar Soul Scryer can. Yeah, it does. So I'm pretty sure you're okay with that. I'd have to double check it, but I think it's okay. Then you've got Font of Willpower. He's got a ward as well, 5-up. Once per battle, if this unit's on the battlefield to start your hero phase, you can pick a ritual for the Ishran table and 1 friendly IDONETH Deepkin unit wholly within 12. Until your next hero phase, the unit you picked is affected by that ritual in addition to any others. So that's quite strong because it doesn't say that.
That has to be Brumdar.
Oh, it does. Okay. So, but you've got Steed of Tides, you've got other ways to get him around the board. So, yeah. I mean, he's okay. I mean, before he was so bad, you never looked at him. But, the fact you can literally add a ritual to taste, it's okay.
It's great already as well.
Yeah. The wound bubble's awesome. Because
5-up, not bad either.
He's not slow. He's moving 6 with a run roll. You could get him to where you need, So I don't think it's like awful.
No. Again, though, he falls into the slot of you're going to be picking 1, not having 3 of the things around that value.
Yeah, it just depends what you want to be doing. So you've got the Soul Scryer, 5 wounds, 4-up save. He's got a ward save again. He's got a ranged shot, which is 8 attacks, 2 falls, rend 1 damage. Isn't too bad. He's got his finger, because apparently that's 3 attacks. He can hit you 3 times with his finger. So he doesn't have that point to get the bonus charge anymore. You used to be able to get like +3 per being pointed at, and then you get +6, and you only need to roll a 3 to charge. So if you're 9 away, you need to roll a 9. You could get +1 to charge in a certain tide, so it could be an 8 from the ambush, but generally it's hard to get that charge off.
Yeah.
But basically you get to deploy off the table. That's what he does. Yeah. So
much more powerful on shooting units or resilient units, I feel.
I actually think bringing Reavers on and shooting is decent.
Because their stand and shoot is so good, we'll touch on them soon, but dropping them on and they're getting charged is kind of fine because you're going to get in 1 round of shooting and then another round of shooting that's pretty good for a Unleash Hell. So, yeah.
Yep. And then you've got the Soul Render, which is one of my favorites.
He's great.
5 wounds, 4 up armor save, 4 attacks, freeze, rend, 1 damage, 2 with 2-inch reach, and 3-inch reach, 3 attacks, freeze, rend, 1 damage from his little swordfish.
Profile. Yeah, got a 5-up ward too.
He does. And at the end of the battle shock phase, pick one friend in the Marty unit wholly within 18 and return to D3 slain models. You can return 3 models instead if you'd killed any models with his Talon hook. And you can't affect the same unit by law light more than once.
Really good.
I mean, it's the end of the battle shock. That's your turn and their turn.
Yeah.
And it's before, like, because you're doing it, you're doing it after they've attacked you. You could bring models on to stop the objective falling and stuff like that. So, and if you're in Morphan, that's D3 plus 3 or 6
plus 3. Yeah,
which is great. And then if they do their go, they do some damage, you bring it on, then it's your go, you retreat out or whatever, then you bring another 4 or 5 back on. You can suddenly get, if you've got, like 20 thralls or reavers, you could suddenly have like 6-7 guys back in the unit. It's
with 5-up wards and stuff like that, you end up almost feeling a bit like a cut price OBR bunker with your man behind it, don't you?
A little bit.
Like it's like pretty good revival potential, which really helps in the grind.
And then you've got the Hangman's Knot, which I think is really cool.
So fun.
So you can pick an enemy model that has a wound characteristic of 7 or less at the end of the combat phase. It's the end, it's after everyone's piled in, everyone's attacked. Roll 2d6. If it's greater than the enemy's wound characteristic, it's dead.
It's dead? Great. That's scary. That's a horrible thing to know that your opponent has access to.
Because the thing is, that breaks coherency, right? And then they can't even fix that.
Or someone's just like, I really need that wizard or warhammer or buff piece or, anything. Or just elite one. Like, how many wounds is a fulminator?
5. Exactly. Like,
that's a really good thing to kill.
Just hook a gore grunter to hog
that's horrible, yeah. Roll more than a 4 on 2 dice. All right.
Yeah. It's good.
Grim.
It has to be greater. You'd have to roll 6, but yeah, it's still good.
Yeah, still pretty solid, isn't it?
Then you've got Elfane, the Ill-Fated, which is the Underworld Warband. He's a soul render. So basically, he's got a net. He's got a bitey eel. He's still got the Lawlight ability. He's got an envenom bite off the eel that does a mortal wound. He's got a soul net. So once per battle at the end of the combat phase, pick an enemy model with 7 or less. That doesn't have a mount. roll
the same.
Roll 2d6. Yeah, it's the same. Yeah. So he's basically a soul render. Yeah.
So the soul render is 120, and then I'm trying to find out.
He's more because he comes with a unit. So I think he's like 180 or 200 or something. And you end up with the soul raid unit, which is just some dudes.
Some more wounds though. 2 10 points. It's you might have 70 points kicking around or whatever it is, 90. So maybe you want some extra boost.
The only thing is that they do have the Iron Rack keyword, so if you were in Morphan, you wouldn't get the bonus heal. So yeah, and I don't know. Maybe I don't think you play these because if you're leaning into Soul Renders, you'll probably go Morphan. So
this is going to be the least used double page of the book, isn't it? This one, as far as the units go.
Oh, look, eels on the other page.
Yeah.
So eels
How
are
the mighty have fallen.
Yeah, they're 195 points each for each unit. Is that the same?
12 wounds, 4 up save.
4 wounds is a bit of a kick because they don't count as 2.
No.
It's a weird spot. 4 wounds. If you run 6, you suddenly got coherency issues.
They also all have reach 1, despite the fact they got spears. So running 6 feels bad, feels shit. So you wouldn't do that ever, I don't think, apart from an argument for just grinding out with the defensive ones, which I do think are the better option of the two.
Because defensive ones you ignore modifiers positive and negative, and they've got to save free up if they've charged.
They used to get reroll charges. They don't have it anymore. They've got add 1 to charge rolls.
Yeah.
That's It's quite a big difference. I'm pretty sure they used to have reroll charges.
Maybe, I can't remember. So
I'll do
add
it
one
hunting.
attacks, add one bravery. I mean, they are bravery 7 now, so 8. So I think they were bravery 6 before. But, you know, Hell Saber, 3 attacks, freeze, 1, rend 1 damage. And then the eels, 3 attacks, freeze, rend 1, d3 damage. For the points, I just want a shark. Because, like, I just think it's comparable melee output, but the shooting's better. I mean, the defensive ones aren't bad, but the Morse are, you know, you got 2 attacks, freeze, no rend, 1 damage. But obviously, like, they get a rend of 2 and a damage of 2 if they charge, but then you got 2 attacks. They got the bio. Sorry, go on.
Yeah, I was just gonna say they lost. They used to have reroll battle shock to standard bearer and reroll charges for musician. That's now +1 bravery or +1 charge. That's a pretty heavy kick in the teeth. Like, that's a really big difference, especially given that they both get potential when they charge. That's quite exciting.
They do have that bio voltaic blast, but because the fact that you don't really want to run a massive unit and it's an enemy unit within 1, and then you roll a dice for each number of model within the unit on a 4+6, 1 on a 6 D3, and you can add 1 to the roll if the number of models in the enemy unit is greater than the number of models in this unit. So if you're going against a big unit, then you do not D3 on 5s. Well, you say that, but it's after charges, so it's before you attack. So if you're going into stuff in, like, I don't know, like 10, if you're going into like 2 dragons, no, you're not going to get it. But if you're going into like 4 dragons with 3, you might. I think eels, you probably run them as little darts now, like little units of 3. But the fact they're 195 points is like eye-watering.
Yeah, 12 wounds. Think of shooting at them. 12 wounds, 4 up save. Yeah.
If they're around the 170 mark, 160 mark, they would be viable. But I think at 195, you're just never going to see these.
I just think this is, you know, it's a typical.
It's an overcorrection, isn't it? It's too far.
The ever-present, like, all not one. Like, we're gonna change the army's rules, we're gonna change the unit's rules, and we're gonna change the unit's points. Just pick one, or be more conservative. They're not unviable. I think I could see 3 of the defensive ones going in some lists because they're fairly grindy, but the sharks are great.
Yeah, and, like, you know, it's
shark time.
It's a shame because basically you don't think you'll see these. Alapexes. 14, 8 wounds, 4 up save, 165 points.
What's bad about these, Russ? Tell me.
Not a lot. I mean, they're pretty good. I mean, you can't, if you have a single, you can't issue command abilities because you're not a champion. You need 2 for that, but, you know.
I would recommend, if you've got the option as well, it's not just like multiple ones is better. Like, having a champion in there is good for multiple reasons.
You've got the Razor Shell Harpoon, 24-inch range, so that's a 38 threat with the move. 4 attacks, freeze, rend 1 damage, D3, which is just solid.
Really good.
The net launchers freeze, 1 shot, damage 3, but if you can't pile in, it's a bit techy. If you're playing eels, it's probably good, but you're not playing eels, so you might do. You can play eels if you want. I personally don't see that as a list.
They don't measure up to the rest of the book, basically.
I don't think so. I'm sure there'll be armies that run like 1 unit of 6 or a couple frees, and they work fine.
All singing, all dancing one.
Or a full one with Voltonus and the King, and it's all eels with Alapexes, and it's really good. I don't know. So obviously eels can be battle line if you've got a King as a general. So you've got 6 attacks in melee, freeze, rend 1 damage. So 2 riders on top are basically the same as 2 riders on the eels, like with the swords. So that's exactly the same. But you also get the bite attacks, which is freeze, rend 2 damage 2. But they get +1 attack if they're within 6 of any enemy models that have wounds or mortal wounds, or they're within 6 of any unit that has had any models slain this turn. So if you're going to shoot something, then go in and attack it, you're probably going to be N4 attacks with the bites, and they're pretty good. Particularly if you're playing in the Shiver, because then 6 is the hit, give you 2 or 3 hits, depending if you're near another one.
The champion gets to add 1 to the hit rolls for attacks made with that model's melee weapons as well.
Yeah.
So that's quite a big buff.
Yeah, because that's 9 attacks hitting on 2s then.
Yeah,
so
exactly.
I do like the 2s, and also your coherency is 3 inches, not 1.
Yeah, I mean, you can make a really weird long line with that.
You could, yeah.
And shoot them at different things. That's like that's a threat range that's basically the table.
Yeah, I mean, the shooting is pretty good. I really like the Alapexes. I think they're really good.
Nothing else to add.
Leviathan.
He's also great.
He's also good. Movement 10, 16 wounds, 2 up save that gets worse as he takes damage. Bravery is 6, which is quite low. Not that it really matters. Not much interacts with it. You know, you don't see many feck around at the moment. Got the Razor Shell Harpoon Launchers. It's basically double the amount of shots that a shark has, because it's 2 of them. Same profile, which is nice, because the whole thing, like all you're shooting is basically freeze, 1 rend, 1 damage or D3 damage. It's basically all the same. So it's quite easy to remember what you got to roll. You've got 6 attacks off the Riders, which is the same as the Shark Riders. Then you've got the massive Scythe Fins, which is 4 attacks, 2s, 3s, rend 1, damage 4, gets worse. And the Crushing Jaws, 2 attacks, 2s, rend 2, damage 3. But if you roll a 6 to hit, it does 3 mortal wounds. But if it's against a monster, it does 6 mortal wounds. And if you carry out a stomp and the wounds catches to 1, they take D6, not D3, if you're going to get single wound things. And it's also got the Void Drum. So add 1 to save rolls for IDONETH Deepkin units that have a wounds catches at 8 or less, wholly within 12 of any friendly Leviathan. So that's the Sharks as well, because they've got 8 or less. In addition, add 1 to hit rolls made by Namati units that target an enemy unit wholly within 12 of any Leviathans. So making that 15 is probably quite good.
I think so. I agree. The melee profile is just kind of like okay. It makes a really big difference if you hit those 6s. It's only got 1 2-inch reach attack. The others are range 1, but the shooting is phenomenal. Like,
I just like the AoE buff. Like, just like +1 save is huge on everything. Could be your army basically, and then getting +1 to hit. And that makes
he's on a 1-up.
He doesn't get the +1 because he's got more innate wounds.
Yeah, okay.
But you know, even better in the first battle round because your whole army's in cover. So all your stuff that's got basically everything in the army apart from the turtle is on a +2 to save. But that's why this shell with it reduces the rend down, and the spells can protect him and the healing, but you can't even target that if you don't put it as the closest thing, so you can save it. So it's like unless they get in the melee, but then you can screen it off the melee, and then you can then just pile and attack them. And
it's not. I mean, it's not movement 10, which only sounds small because it's in the context of this book. That's pretty good for a flying movement 10 is brilliant.
And there are in some of the turns you can run and charge, so it's it's pretty good. It's a totem as well, whatever reason that makes, but it's a
boosted range on something.
Not that I don't think you can issue it because it's a monster, but which is a bit random. But there you go. It's a cool model.
Special turtle.
It is special.
2 of those in an army is fine. Just as a note for people.
Yeah.
Russ and I were talking about it earlier. Like you can just block off your army. One of those is a wall.
It's 1,000 points.
Yeah,
it's a lot. I think 500 points is steep for what it is, because there's a lot of stuff that could go in and just potentially one-shot it. No ward save on it. Doesn't like mortals.
You got to be screwed. I think it's one of those really difficult discipline. The melee profile isn't that good. The shooting profile is fantastic. And
it's a platform that you shoot people with, and then there's a turn that you go in and tag, and then in high tide you don't care about it being charged, so you just go charge me. But yeah, I mean, I like the fact it buffs Namati, so it's good. Speaking of buffing Namati, we got the new hero, the Kilian Master, came in the Fury of the Deep set. I don't think that's the only way you can get him at the moment. 5 wounds, 4 up save. It doesn't have a ward save. He's not an Ishran hero. He's actually a Kilian hero. So he's actually a combat guy. So you can give him those Achillean things if you wanted to. Don't sure you would.
110 points, so he's not expensive.
5 attacks, freeze, rend 1 damage 2, and 2 attacks, freeze 4s, no rend 1 damage from his fish. So he's got this fighting stance. Start the combat phase, pick one of the following fighting stances. And this affects all Namati wholly in 12. Reroll hit rolls of 1 for attacks made by melee weapons, or you can it's all wholly in 12. So if you roll a 6 to hit, you get 2 hits, or subtract 1 from wound rolls against the Marty units. So I actually quite like what he does if you're running thralls. I don't think he's expensive, and because he can multi-buff multiple units, and he's not awful in combat. And the good thing about Deepkin heroes when you're in high tide is that they get to swing before they get killed.
Yeah.
And he's still got a 4-up armor save. He's not awful.
No, definitely not. 110 points, I think he's pretty solid, really.
Yeah. Don't quite know why he's got like a head penis, but it's
no, I don't know why he's got everything that's on his model.
I think he's meant to be
at some point.
I think he's meant to be like
taught
festooned with weapons, and his stances use different weapons. I think he's almost meant to be like, do you know, like when you see like those martial arts movies and they pull off the different weapons off the racks and they do different katas with it. I think he's meant to be like that.
In the Matrix.
Exactly. Yeah. Just didn't pick up a gun. What an idiot. Should have picked up a harpoon launcher.
Stuck in the ground next to it. Just like I love a nice pile of, you know, like sword stuck into a mound in the ground or something like that. I really like it.
I used to really like the old high off bolt throw that came with the shield and the helmet and the spear that was on the stand, because the crew weren't using it. But if something got there, you know, they're just going to grab their gear. You know, it was really cool. So, and then thralls, movement 6, 1 wound, 5 up save, 7 bravery. So I think they're better than they were. 2-inch reach, 2 attacks, freeze, rend 1, damage 1. 2-inch reach is big. They used to have 1 inch on 32 mil bases. That makes a big difference. You get to add 1 to the attacks if you're going to get something that's got a wound of 1, or add 1 to damage if they've got wounds of 3 or more.
30 points for 10.
Which I really like them. I think they're really underrated when you buff them with like +1 to hit, +1 to wound, exploding attacks.
Yeah, I've been taken out by some of these, but not giving them enough respect. Not just when I played Rust recently, but in the past, you know, just having 10 of them run into you and then do a number on like Varangard. I remember Tony Moore just mullering some out of nowhere with them. Oh, okay.
And now that they've got the reach, they can actually bring their combat power to bear. I really like the fact you can return them quite cheapy as well, especially if you took Live Swarm. It's
and you
huge.
Can get a 5-up ward. I mean, that is
5-up ward if you're within 6 of the Gloomtide shipwreck.
Very easily done. 10 of these.
If you take the ritual and it's high tide, you've got a 5-up ward as well. You can even take the king. So if it's not high tide, you charge. He can do D3 units count as being high tide. They would get the ward. So again, you're probably going to kill what you swing at, but if you're fighting something particularly tough, you don't kill it. It does protect them for a turn and probably pin them. So if you're going into something like Kragnos and you're like, I'm not going to kill him, but I'm probably going to do a significant chunk of damage and he won't kill me back because of the ward, and the Battle Shock returning 6 models or whatever because I've got more fan, then I'll probably keep the unit there and pin him.
Yeah. Do you see these 110 in most armies just to have that option that are considering infantry?
I like multiple 10s and use them a bit like MSU Swordmasters in the day. Yeah. Like they're kind of like a screen that can do stuff. Like in my head, it's like you've got to deal with them. They're cheap enough that they don't feel like a massive cost. Yeah, but they are elite in a way. It's whether or not you want to pay the points for the Kilian Master, the Soul Render, if you've got the Void Drum, you know that.
If they're there, then these seem like a much cheaper proposition, don't they?
it's just a force multiplier. Would I run a 20? Maybe. But I kind of don't know.
You wouldn't have considered it in the past, but now they got the reach. I just thought it was worth checking.
I mean,
like
maybe
20 with a ward, like it's kind of.
I mean,
interesting,
20 is
isn't it?
fine because you could actually survive, and then if you're using more fan to put 6 back in, it's like, you know, you're going to quickly get that unit back because you're eventually getting that twice. And the fact is that Soul Render's not easy to kill because he's got a 4-up, 5-up, and you can garrison him in one of the boat, because the Gloom type you can do is 2 separate bits, and you could put hero in each one. They're going to be, it's defensible terrain, so it's harder to hit them. They get a bonus to the save. You know, your unit wholly within 6 of it gets a ward save, so you could literally put a Soul Render in the boat and the Thralls in a blob in front of it on an objective, and then wait for high tide before you run out and attack. And all the time they don't engage you, you're just shooting them with Reavers and Sharks. It works. I think it works. I like them. I think they're a lot better than they were. I think they're viable now.
Oh, absolutely.
Reavers.
170. Tell me about your Reavers.
I really like these. I think they look expensive, but 18 inch range, movement 8, 2 shots, freeze, rend 1/1 damage.
8. So good.
They used to get run and shoot as natural, but you don't get that anymore. But you can get that with the tides. You know, in melee, 1 attack, freeze, no rend, 1 damage. So you don't really want to be in melee with them, but it's still okay. Like, and if you are within 9, then you get to add 1 to hit rolls.
The missile weapons.
Yeah. So if you unleash hell with them, you kind of end up back at freeze.
Yeah. And
if you're within range of the turtle, then they're going to be on 2s.
Yeah.
And then if you've got a wound buff from Lotan or from the thing, you're going to be on. No, wound won't work because it's Lotan will, but not from the other guy. So Lotan, it does work. You would be on 2s. So 2s.
Horrible for just their unleash help. That makes a really big difference. Just so much more likely to get your points worth out.
And even 10 of them, that's 20 shots.
Yeah.
Like,
completely.
I really like them. I think for a battle line unit, 170 seems expensive, but then when you look at Bliss Barbs or Sentinels,
feels fine.
So when you look at Bliss Barbs, they feel cheap. When you look at Sentinels, they feel expensive. But I think for the army, they're 5 points more than the Shark. You get more wounds, slightly worse in combat. If you add up 10 dudes, basically, slightly more shots, so more damage potential from shooting.
More reliable shots.
Lower range.
Yeah.
But their battle line, you know, so I don't think, and the 10 bodies for objectives. So I don't think you're like, you just take a Shark. It's like, they are good.
There's a choice there. They feel kind of like when I was running my original mixed order grab bag, like that's kind of how I viewed my my blade guard block that I had. Like they're going to do some fairly effective shooting a little bit, quite reliably, and they were always a good call for a Triumph or something like that. Like Triumph on these on their own, and they could be hitting someone on 2s and 2s. If you got the wounds Triumph, I feel horrible. It's really like, it's nasty when you go into a unit like that with something that should wipe them out, and then you get there and you've only got 3 dudes out of 10 left. Like, they're going to survive that.
Yeah, and like the Gloom Tide shipwreck probably needs a bit of talking about. So after territory is determined, you can set this faction terrain wholly within your territory, more than 3 from objectives of a terrain. You can choose to do it as 2 pieces, or 1 large one. It's defensible, so that means it can be garrisoned. You get bonuses for being in there. I think it's minus to hit, +1 save, something like that. You can either put 5 IDONETH or a model with wounds 5 or less. Doesn't have amounts. That's basically all your foot heroes.
Yep.
If this terrain feature was set up as a large shipwreck, it can do 10 IDONETH or with a wounds catch of 5 or less that do not have amounts. So this allows you to put 10 Reavers in it, 10 Thralls in it. It's pretty good just for that. But it also gives you a ward save if you don't have a mount of 5 up if they're wholly within 6. And there are no enemy within 3 inches of this terrain.
Pretty good. Like, that's really good. Especially given it can be in 2 places. It's quite easy to put 10 guys in front of those 2.
Yeah, I mean, like, if you're playing,
And
you
your
got
guys
2
want
home
more
objectives, you just
survival.
put the 2 shipwrecks, touch in the ring, put
Yep.
your 2 heroes in, put your 10 thralls in front.
Yep.
They can't get within 3 of it. They've got a 5 up ward. The hero's there. That's 12 capture power on your home objectives. If they're reavers, they're shooting. If they're thralls, they're sat there being bosses. That you know, if you're able to do that with the turtle in the middle to blobble them, then they're all at +1 save as well.
Yeah, so good.
And then you're
+1 save and
and then if you've got like, because the way when we played, I had that like defensive bunker and I had the Gloomtide with 10 reavers in. If it gives you an unleash hell potential, if you set it up right as well. If you had a big ship with 10 reavers and then put thralls in front, you know, 5 wholly within 5 to charge you, they're gonna have to come within 6. You then only share with the guys in the boat, and then you could fight with the reavers if you do something kind of like you Bioshock the hero, or you're in high tides, or you pop you know, there's stuff you can do. So I think I really like the Gloomtide. I like the idea of then raising a wreck. Thematically, I think it looks cool. If you imagine like this wreck almost coming out the ground, like out of the A4C, it'd be
great
awesome
model as well. I really like it.
It is really nice, yeah. And you know, like it's you get it for nothing. So
and you can get 2 of them.
And you can have 2. I think it's cool.
Plus 4 pieces, which is basically your entire army on a 5 up ward if you were going in that direction.
Yeah,
which you could.
And yeah, so that's it. We'll go through. We'll just skim the points. So Reavers 170, Thralls 130. They're your battle line. Leviathans are 500. They're Behemoth. Their battle line in Nautilus, which would then remove the Behemoth rule, so you wouldn't need to worry about the Behemoth cap, but you only take 3 anyway. But Eidolons are leaders, not unique, and they are not Behemoths, so you could run 6. You'd run out of points, but if you wanted to run 5 or something, you could do a crazy army. That'd be quite fun. Voltonus is unique. Then you've got the Underworld Warband at 210, the King, the Referral Master, the Tidecaster, the Soul Squire, the Soul Render, and Lotan are all leaders. Lotan is unique, obviously. Alapex is a 165, battle line in Futan. You've got the Shiver, 495, only can be done in Futan. They're taken as a set. Although they're taken as a set, each as a separate unit. That's your 3 battle line. Then you've got Morsar Guard and Ishling Guard at 195. They can be battle line if the general is an Kilian king, and your shipwreck. Allies, cities, daughters, Lumineth, Stormcast, Sylvaneth. So
brilliant sizable, but you're not going to have points very easily.
You just have to make the choice. Do you take dragons, or do you take a turtle, or do you take dragons, or do you take an Eidolon, or do you take dragons, or do you take an ally, or do you take 6 long strikes or something like that? So I think personally, the shooting for the turtle and the sharks, if you invest in that, is really good. Combine that with Reavers, the shooting is nuts.
24-inch range is it's quite a big deal. With a big move before it, it's particularly big.
Because you could make a really nasty shooting list with a turtle, 3 units of Reavers, Alapexes, C, and a Ishran hero on foot of some description. Probably a Soul Render to return your archers, and you're just there like, that's a lot of damage. It really is.
Nice to play. Like, I know that there's quite a lot of nuance in writing the list. It's a fairly technical army, but there's not a huge amount of wall scrolls or kind of. It's not a techie army because there's a massive amount of crap, I'd say. So once you've done a few games with it, I think it'd feel like a pretty enjoyable army to play with and against.
Reminds me of Nurgle.
It does. Similar
in terms of like the feel of it.
completely. I just wanted to touch on something that I went and checked. We gave the Deepkin a 4.5 face hammers out of 5 for are these a good first army for Age of Sigmar? When we did it last time. I think that's still a brilliant first pick. Get a bit of magic in there fairly easily without being too complex or like, bullshitty. You could do combat, you could do shooting, you could do movement, you can do resilient, you can do monster heavy, you can do infantry heavy, and infantry heavy is now way more viable than it's ever been.
I would probably downgrade that a little bit purely because the kits are a little bit more fiddly. And also, I think the army's technical with positioning and buffs to make it good. And if you don't play those things right, or you don't construct the list correct, and you don't have those options, you could quite easily just get smashed off the table because you don't.
So because the range that it's like, it's very different positioning something that's got 18-inch shooting to something that's got 24-inch shooting.
I'm talking more about there's so much stuff in the game that can travel across the board and hit you in the face, which is why Lumineth struggle despite how good Sentinels are.
Yeah.
That if you don't have things like, oh, I've got the Gloomtide in range and I've got my character protected well and they're in wholly within 12 with the Void Drum and I've got this set up. They're 6 up, they're 1 wound, 5 up save infantry and 4 up save, 8 wounds, no ward save sharks, and you're just gonna get trucked.
Yeah.
And
I mean, if you
mess up and unleash hell, or you get like Fellbats pop in and just block you off or force you to use it, I think if you're a new player, like you're not experienced, there will be games I think where you will get punished for mistakes. Is probably what I'm trying to say. So yeah, I
think that'll be over fairly fast. So it's not like when you screw up with an army like this, it's not like you fail to do something, like 3 turns ago and this and that. I imagine you'd have a fairly, even if it was a rocky beginning, I imagine it'd be pretty obvious.
I think
5 games in with this one.
I guess so. But I feel as well, when you've got that many options with what you shoot and how far you move and what you fight,
yeah, that's fair.
It's easy to make the wrong choice when you're inexperienced. Whereas if you've got an army that's just resilient and a bit slow and your opponent kind of dictates the game, you're probably going to feel like you've got more. You'll probably lose, but you'll probably feel like you've had more of a game. I feel like I do think they're good, don't get me wrong. But I just think as a new player, be wary because I think they're quite challenging to use effectively.
Not quite destruction.
But that if you wanted to do a new player friendly list, lean into Sharks and Turtle and Eidolon, you'd probably be okay.
Yeah.
But if you want to do certain techie Referrals and Reavers and fragile units, then you need to be a little bit savvy what you're doing.
Yeah.
Just my 2 cents. I just think there's a.
Well, you put them there when you put them at the 3.5, 4 range.
Yeah,
like
yeah.
3.5 if infantry and 4 if not infantry.
Yeah.
All things considered.
Yeah, and I just think
about the kits
because the kits are like
brilliant for building.
You've got to do sub assemblies. You've got the flying stands. You've got like they're fiddly. They're quite small. Mold the armor's actually quite hard to paint because of how it's sculpted.
I don't like any of the things that aren't the creatures
because the armor is like ridged. Like so.
I disagree. Actually, I think you can get a good job surprisingly fast. You just can't get an amazing job.
Right. Okay. I suppose you could just base coat wash it and it'll look okay. Yeah. Put a blue wash on it. Yeah, it's fine. Blue teal wash. Yeah, that Pterodon turquoise glaze on it. Love that color.
Army's asking for head swaps. I feel as well, like there's or not sticking all the crap on.
I am tempted to do something with Dark Elder models and the Morphan because I was looking at like stuff like the Mandrakes. They're like samurai with fiery balls in their hands. I thought even that would make a cool character, like a Thrall Master. That'd look cool.
Yeah, like scale as well.
Then you've got like the Incubi would make great looking Thralls with some head swaps. They would look bad. They would look too good for Thralls. You'd be like, wow, they look really elite. And they go, what are they? Oh, they're like soulless children. Yeah. So, okay. No, I mean, I think the book's great. The only thing I'm disappointed in is the eel overcorrection. I think the King, Voltonus, and the eels feel underwhelming and too expensive. I think the king. I think if they've given wards to the Ishrans, I just think they should have a ward save. If they're going to be 250, 290 points, they should have wards. Otherwise, you could drop them by 50 points easily.
Yeah, 50-50, and then like it's nearly dropping the the eels by 30 points.
Yeah, I'd put the eels down to like 170, 165, something like that.
Yeah, I think so.
They need to be in the same ballpark as sharks and reavers to be considered.
Otherwise, it's not a discussion. Really,
it's not. No,
I know the sharks have got less wounds per, but they've also got an incredible shooting attack, which can keep them safer because they can be further back.
Yeah, well, you get more reach and like they're almost the same output in terms of combat. You know, like I think the problem with coherency with having 6 of the Morsar, they should almost have a rule where you can coherency is 3 inches.
Oh, they should. Why don't they have reach 2? They got spears.
Well, that's the other thing, yeah. So
yeah,
because the sword is the same reach as a spear, Byron. Don't you know that? Maybe they got their spears made by the same people who made the lances for the Vampire Lord on Zombie Dragon,
or every single attack profile on the War Crusher.
Yeah, well, he's stood on a big beast quite far away, and he's knuckling like that. You see, so
no, he can't hit people.
No, I was surprised he didn't have a 2-inch on his fists, but maybe he just kind of like nuzzles rather than punches. It's just like like a cat needing you. So no, I don't know, but I mean, it's really good. There's a lot of options. I like that Namati are an option now. I like that the sharks are good.
For sure.
Turtle seems like a good unit to include, but I could see armies without it because it's a lot of points.
Yeah.
Because of 500 points, just pour that straight into more bodies.
I just think it's a great way to start the army dead quick with 2 of them.
I mean,
I painted 2 models. I'm half done.
I mean, brilliant. I bought the box set, which comes with a shark in it. And I think it's got 10 thralls, 10 reavers, and a thrall master. Start collecting
shark, 2 turtles. Be done.
Well, I mean, literally, my list is Eidolon, thrall master, soul render, 2 units of 10 thralls, 1 unit of 10 reavers, 3 sharks, turtle. I didn't say that already. I think that's it.
Yeah, turtle. That's it.
And it's like fine. Gloom type shit, right? So I
was really impressed by it. It's a really good army for you can deploy and give your opponent a bit of a nightmare because you can spread out and it kind of doesn't matter what's where. Usually they move dead quick for redeploying. You've got enough ranged threat that your opponent can't just be like, I'm not coming at you yet, because you will do quite a lot of damage.
And you can deploy quite far back, and then they'll go, you have the turn, and you can still move up, cap the objectives, and shoot them.
Yeah.
So it's not like deploying far back is a disadvantage.
No, I would agree.
Particularly when you've got battle tactics like run free units that you could just do on the back end of the board with you not care.
Yes,
just be like on.
So, and each time they do that, you're getting towards the turn where you're going to have ASF, which is horribly scary. So it's a bit of a conundrum for your opponent. I think just by starting with this army, you put your opponent in a fairly difficult position as long as you've got some shooting, which is hard to not get really when you're writing a list.
Yeah, and I think to play IDONETH effectively, you need to have it.
Yes, agreed.
So like you need to have that shooting threat. You need to have, and whether that, and it's probably through sharks or reavers. Reavers, I think, are really good. I think they're underrated. They seem expensive, but I think they're great. I mean, if you took 3 battle line units of 10 reavers, they're going to do a lot of work in the game.
I'm just waiting to see someone turn up with
60.
The teleport guy in 220s and be like,
well,
horrible.
I mean, it's viable. Just come off the doors 40 shots.
Yeah, it'd be absolute filth. Really,
they recharge you, stand and shoot. Go on then.
Given the speed of the army as well, you could do that with you could shoot something and then have tagged its remainders or put something into it because you've got a load of move.
When do you do the Gloomtide shipwreck from the artifact? I've just got a thought.
Let me check.
Is it at the movement phase?
And then your first movement phase,
right?
Will summon, so you could teleport.
You could teleport on the edge with a soul scryer.
Yeah, and that gets
that's end, right?
Because the scrolls rules is in your deployment zone, but that doesn't matter because
it's got its own rules. So you basically come on the edge of the board with the soul scryer, who can have that artifact because he's Ishran.
Yeah.
Big blob of archers.
Like 20 block.
Raise your shipwreck to give them a ward.
Yeah.
Then you just shoot the shit out of something.
And
They charge you,
and then
you
have
stand
a
and
5-up
shoot.
ward.
And you got a 5-up ward.
Your turtle could have run over to that corner of the board in that time as well, easily.
Yeah, I mean, you could even like teleport your seaman over there.
Take a turtle. Guy.
Just throw your seaman across the other side of the board. I mean, your aspect of the sea, not your seaman.
Let's no longer on the podcast. No dogs were harmed during the return.
No turtles were injured. No, so I think like even stuff like that is cool. Like, you know.
Yeah. Apart from the page with the warband and the eels on it, I think even the stuff that I poo-pooed a bit, that like we're getting excited about.
I still think like a king is a good option because he gives you the option to ping high tide.
Yeah.
So you can charge 3 things into a big monster, pick high tide, and you go, well, they're all going to fight you before you fight me, so I'm not worried about not leaving you alive. You kill the other thing. So it's like if you're against like giant and you put 3 things in, if that could be like 10 thralls, him on the steed and something else.
Yeah.
It is D3 units, so you might roll a 1. But
so nice being able to run in a foot hero, like, or something like that as well. Like, well, you know, he's actually got a fairly decent melee profile, and he's buffed by this thing, and he's definitely gonna hit you before you hit him.
Yeah. So I think it's a solid book. I really enjoy it. I think there's a lot of lists. I even think you could write eel lists if you wanted to. I just don't think it's going to be as effective.
No,
but yeah.
Are you definitely doing an army?
Yeah, well, I bought it and I've started building it. So I've got my little.
So I guess we'll be hearing more about it then.
I've got this guy.
Your list's evolution.
Dickhead man.
Wonderful. It's a guy with 17 things on him.
Yeah.
That's what I want.
So I figured I'm going to build the list I played you with today because I don't think it'll take very long. I'm going to paint them in more fan.
Pop that list below. Pop it in the description.
Yeah, well, we've got time lapse of the game, so I figured
added to Element as a bundle as well. It's
okay,
a box, isn't it? Plus some other stuff.
Yeah, I can pop it below and stuff, and we could put a bundle. What I want to do is get the time lapse footage of that game and just talk through it.
Yeah.
Once on another show, so we'll release that to give you guys some ideas. But yeah, I'm tempted to give it another run out. I'm going to start building it anyway, so I've already got 2 sharks assembled, and you know, I'll see how painful it is building Reavers before I decide to build 40 of them. So I've done Bliss Barb, so I think I'm okay.
Yeah, I think anyone who's done Bliss Barb is okay on multiple levels. Everything's better.
Cool. Well, that's the IDONETH Deepkin Battletome. Hope you found the show useful. If you're excited about Deepkin, if there's any particular army lists you're excited about, or like, you know, concepts or combos you think we may have missed or overlooked.
If you're a long-time Deepkin player and you've got some thoughts, then let's know below.
Be interested to know how you feel. I think if you were playing Deepkin when they first come out and you didn't adapt for the Broken Realms updates, I think it doesn't play like that anymore. No. It's not that kind of army. So you're either going to be disappointed or you're going to be excited, depending if you didn't like the eel spam.
A lot more variety. Probably a more fulfilling experience for opponents and players, I think.
You know, I've had some really good games against Deepkin because people always underestimate the movement. The fact that you can actually move like round the table fairly easily is a big deal. So I think a lot of people never, when they played the eel list, kind of mashed it into your face on turn 1, and I think that was always a mistake because like you're just giving up the advantage of being fast because you're just not. You want to almost make the enemy spread out and then start picking things off one at a time.
The threat's always horrible, isn't it? Like you don't want to be dealing with a threat.
No, but we'll see. I am looking forward to actually getting my army together and on the table and play some games with it. I might try and take it to the Hampshire GT in April. If I can get it done in time. So either that or I'll just take my Maggot-kin. So I haven't decided yet, but because I enjoy them too. So there you go. Just need to get the Soulblight army done. But yeah, it's one of those armies that has got a big barrier to entry. I don't know if it's going to be as quick to play if I go the Graveguard route. So yeah, the Deepkin definitely tickling my fancy. I've always wanted a Deepkin list, but I never wanted to run
that's so
eels.
cool.
So, you know, I almost did it back in Broken Realms. The only reason I didn't is because of like COVID and stuff. Couldn't play in games. Didn't see the point.
Yeah, there wasn't an event. I was really tempted by them when I read that, so I absolutely understand that completely.
Cool. All right. Well, thanks for watching. We'll catch you all in the next one.
See you later, guys. Bye.
Bye.